Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for checking out my show, Coin Stories, where I get to hear from the leading voices in Bitcoin, financial markets and investing, political structures, philosophy, and more. Please make sure you're subscribed to the show. And if you're watching this on YouTube, like the video so more people see it, and hit that notifications button so you don't miss out on any new content. This podcast does not provide financial advice. It is for educational and entertainment purposes only. So make sure to do your own research before making any investment decision and be aware of your risk tolerance. I'm able to produce this show thanks to my sponsors, and I'm very picky about who I choose to partner with. So I hope you take the time to listen to the ad reads throughout the show. All right, now to my first partner, where I buy my Bitcoin, Swan. I partnered with Swan because it is a Bitcoin-only company focused on helping people save for their future and self-custody their Bitcoin, not trade it. You can start a direct deposit to take advantage of Bitcoin as a savings technology and learn how to take it off the exchange. Swan's mission is to educate 10 million future Bitcoiners through free resources and media projects like Hard Money. Swan also offers retirement planning with an IRA, tax loss harvesting, home equity conversion, and a white glove private client service. I use Swan to dollar cost average every day. That's right. I deposit a little bit every day that's equivalent to what I might spend on a meal so that I add to my future nest egg and lower my yearly cost basis. To learn more and get $10 in free Bitcoin when you sign up, head to swanbitcoin.com/Natalie Brunell. Welcome back to Coin Stories. I'm so excited to have with me today Will Reeves. He's the CEO of Fold. And if you watch my show, you know that Fold is one of my main partners. I'm super grateful because it's one of the best ways to get people into Bitcoin for the first time, learning about it and earning it. I have an alarm so I can spin my wheel and not forget. And I'm excited to hear how you built the company. Thanks so much for joining me, Will.
You're very good at that, Natalie. I am absolutely happy to be here. It's been a long time coming, I think, and yeah, excited to chat.
Okay, so let's start with your origin story because that's one of the reasons why people tune into my show is to hear the backstories of all the great Bitcoiners. So where are you from? And tell me a little bit about your upbringing.
I come from a place very close to the center of tech, but culturally very far away. I was born in Glen Ellen and Napa in Sonoma, in Northern California, and to a family that met at a winery and worked at a winery together all their lives. And really, it was in that small town where, have very close-knit friends. And really, my first jobs was a cellar rat, pruning vines, digging ditches, really whatever. And it all seems like a far cry from where I am today in technology, but it certainly was, what rooted me, what gives me a sense of place in the world.
Wow. Wait, I want to hear a little bit more about that because I have traveled a little bit in that area. I used to live in Sacramento, so it was close by to go to, Napa, Sonoma, Healdsburg. But what's it like growing up? Because I can only imagine it's a lot of families with vineyards and they've been in the family for generations. I mean, what was your upbringing there like?
It's Sonoma's an interesting place because it's an hour from San Francisco, but it is, when I grew up, I believe the town was a couple thousand people, and it was really made up of people that worked and ran the wineries and people that worked at them. And with this really interesting thing that would happen every year during harvest, where you'd get an influx of thousands of people, migrant workers coming through, who would actually do the dirty work and hard work of harvesting the grapes, and they would stay for a couple months and then move on. And there was this interesting cycle. And so the town had a really um, uh, very close-knit culture, but people were extremely stratified. Like you said, you had people who owned the estates and wineries, and then you'd be playing on the soccer team or baseball team with their kids, and then right next to you would be kids of those that were actually working on the wineries, picking the grapes, building, and all these things that brought us all together, but really allowed you to live a life very much in proximity to all the sides that we see in society. So it was a really great kind of small town microcosm for what the rest of the world is.
Yeah, microcosm is a good word because you're right. If I think about, someone who might grow up in that area, winemaking sounds like a very lucrative business, but you don't think about the fact that it is probably an even more diverse community than some of the areas that I've lived in big cities. So what's maybe something that would surprise people about that industry? Or, I mean, how involved were you? Were you ever, mixing wines or stomping on grapes?
Oh yes, I did it all. When you're there, you just kind of pop around to whatever job is available, and so I've really done it all, from pruning, from in the production, wine tasting, really everything. And your friends are making wine, so
So cool.
the it's an interesting place because you're able to get into it. Like everyone's born into this, right? And you're just kind of moving through whatever path you have. And uh, when I was young, the town was a couple thousand people. When I left around 18, it was 10 plus thousand people. It had grown so fast, and the makeup of the entire town grew. It went from small family wineries to now corporate conglomerates coming in and buying all wineries. Because what you don't know is that
Yeah.
people think wineries are very lucrative and huge businesses, but really at the end of the day, it's an agricultural endeavor. And when it's a family doing it, you're taking out massive loans and
Right.
leverage, very similar to what family farms maybe in the Midwest would have done. And where this kind of world views kind of start to mix is that creates a lot when you have small entities taking on a bunch of leverage to sustain a lifestyle, to do what they really want to do, to build a craft that you plant grapes and you're not reaping those grapes to be able to make wine for almost for years, sometimes 3 to 5 years. And so it's
Right.
extremely low time preference thing, but it requires huge upfront investment, belief. But it also creates, in a world where there's access to a lot of easy money, and when hard times come, families are put in a really tight spot. And so you saw over kind of my specific time in Sonoma, where these family farms every single year, every crisis, especially '08 crisis, were just bought up by massive conglomerates, world, producers. And now the majority of winemaking in that area is all corporate. And so it changed right in front of my eyes, really.
Wow. I wanted to ask you about this. It sounds like there should almost be a chapter of Safe's next book called Fiat Wine, because it sounds
Yeah.
like it's a lot like the food industry, where you go to the grocery store, you think you have a lot of choice and options, but actually all of those brands supposedly that you see are owned by like 8 companies total. And there's been this consolidation of capital because of our money being broken. So that's really interesting, because I guess I didn't think about it in the winemaking industry, but did that inform maybe your views or plant a seed, so to speak, where you might appreciate Bitcoin as you came to see, behind the scenes how this industry worked?
I think what it planted was very fundamental concepts of proof of work, of low time preference, of putting something that you truly believe in behind your passion to then support you and your family through generations. The winery that I really grew up working on was a family winery that before them was a family wineries, and just kind of it was a passed down type of thing. And they farmed in a very specific way, what's called biodynamic farming. And there's no way a corporation would come in and say, I'm going to start a biodynamic farm, because number one, it is costs way too much money. It produces a lot less grapes. A lot of the land that you would normally use to produce the grapes, you're allocating towards gardens and things to attract certain pollinators and help you with pest prevention. So it's just from a corporate standpoint of let's churn this out, economies of scale. It's a very bad way to farm from their perspective. It's just totally different than factory farming. But this is one of the wineries that was turned over, was bought by a corporation. Why? Because they wanted to have the mantle of an idea of a biodynamic family farm that was able to kind of be a brand that would sit on top of all their others and give it kind of a halo of this, organic biodynamic family. Yet all those concepts were being essentially taken out from it, which is very similar to stuff that Safe would talk about there of,
Mm.
you know, um, things, traditional ways of being done that kind of because from a cost perspective and things start to get removed, although the symbols and the artifacts remain there. And so it creates a really strange, wait, is this wait, the family doesn't run this, or it's not biodynamic. They're, so it was definitely informative about understanding two things about Bitcoin, both the aspect that nothing comes for free. Money should not be, the production of money should not be free. It also should be not dependent on, a small group of people's decisions on how that's done. Just like growing grapes, you follow patterns of nature that are not things that you can change. It's something that you have to follow, and everyone has the same rules. So I'd say from that perspective, there is that. And then there's also just the trauma of seeing your town, which is one of the most fertile, beautiful places to grow up, best culture ever, to now becoming what is essentially a husk of its former self. Most people are there, are having second homes. The local high school, I believe, will have 20% of the student population that it did when I was there. So it's just the idea of families and everything is just being evacuated because of the kind of economic dynamics that are, prevailing now.
That makes me really sad. I actually, not a lot of people know this, but I actually lived and worked in Italy for a couple of years. And I worked at a television station this was a long time ago now, but we did a series on the vineyards of Tuscany. And I was like, is this my job? This is pretty awesome. So all the vineyard owners came and they showed off their wines. But what was most fascinating that I didn't realize I would learn during that process is that so many of these beautiful wineries across Tuscany, which is known for some of the rarest and best quality red wines in the world, they were being bought up by foreign investors. I mean, Chinese companies were coming in and buying what was once in an Italian family for centuries. And I didn't understand back then, right? But now I think about that experience and I think, wow, it's happening all over the world. The capital is concentrating in the hands of a few people. They get to expand to different industries and create these, conglomerates. And in my opinion, the quality goes down ultimately at the end of the day. And there's something really sad about that. I mean, what was once belonging to, generations of one Italian family, someone comes in who may or may not actually be as invested, especially locally, in producing value and jobs. And it's really sad that it seems to be happening everywhere.
Yeah, to the point of, not only quality comes down, but people, I grew up with vineyards right behind me, and it wasn't my vineyard, but when it was family owned, that the family's living there too. How they would treat their vines, what they would treat them with, would be something that they were subject to and I would be subject to. Now, as that disappears, that line between, hey, it's good to grow biodynamically because I'm living and eating here, versus now, hey, someone, on the East Coast who now owns this may make a totally different decision that would have a different impact. And so, it's sad. It took me a while to, especially the winery that my parents met at, that turned over, of my friends, all that. Most of my friends growing up stopped going into the wine industry. They went into growing cannabis up more north, and so they were kind of going to their own frontier. But really, what's happened to the wine industry, the most interesting things, is a whole different. There's no such thing really as, hey, I'm going to get my plot of land and I'm going to grow grapes, and then I'm going to grow, make my wine, produce my wine there. Now it is, I'm going to go source grapes from someone else, from somewhere, multiple parts of California, and I'll find a way to produce it myself, which has brought down the cost of barrier to entry. So you're getting to see a lot more new influx of new winemakers come into the space that are doing more interesting things. So it definitely has had bad implications, no doubt, especially for a specific place, but it's done interesting things on the periphery too. And, in France, there's whole, quote unquote terrorist organizations that are all about stopping these corporate takeovers of wineries. They'll go and blow up wineries that are, bought by, international wine fund, so.
Why are we not drinking wine while talking right now?
That's a good question. That's a good question.
It's almost 5:00 where I am. Okay, well, so I want to hear your Bitcoin journey and your career journey. So you obviously are not running a vineyard. You're running a Bitcoin rewards debit card and a really cool app to help people learn about Bitcoin and start getting in the game. So tell me a little bit about your Bitcoin journey and how you ended up founding Fold. It's time for a quick break to hear these messages from my partners. First up, Bitcoin Conference 2023. The world's largest Bitcoin conference is returning to Miami Beach from May 18th to May 20th. Day one is Industry Day with a focus on business-minded panels and discussions, plus top-tier networking opportunities. General admission days 2 and 3 are open to all pass holders and feature panels, keynotes, and workshops with speakers like Michael Lewis, Michael Saylor, Jack Mallers, Lynn Alden, Arthur Hayes, and more. Plus some exciting new additions like the inaugural Bitcoin Games and the Mining Village, and the return of Pitch Day. I highly recommend this conference. It's what launched my career. And if you want to come, just head to b.tc/conference and use the code HODL, HODL, for 10% off. I'll see you in Miami Beach. Next up, Fold. Fold is the best Bitcoin rewards debit card and shopping app in the world. You can earn Bitcoin on everything you purchase, from Amazon to groceries to sprucing up your wardrobe, with Fold's Bitcoin Cashback debit card. And you can win free Satoshis every day, or even play for the chance to win a whole Bitcoin by spinning the daily wheel and the purchase rewards wheel. And now on Fold, you can buy Bitcoin directly and earn even more incentives and rewards by using the app to stack sats. It's an amazing app to get someone totally new into Bitcoin. So if you want to join the fun, head to foldapp.com/Natalie and get 10,000 in free sats when you sign up.
Well, that kind of starts. So I initially, out of Sonoma, what I really want to do, I'm going to become a journalist. I followed migrant workers and took a lot of photos. It was like, oh, this is a path. People recognize it. This is going great. I'm learning Spanish. This is fun. It's something I care about. And so I was, I went to school and very quickly said, worked at the university newspaper. I ran the Berkeley Political Review. I thought that was exactly what I wanted. And then I get to a point where I get burnt out on, I think it was being stuck as an observer and a commentator on things. And I realized that's just not who I am. I need to be doing. I want to be creating the news. And so I was like, I know what I want to do. I want to go into politics, which was the worst of my career detours. And so I went to work for a politician in San Francisco. We were doing Senate campaigns, and very quickly there became so jaded about the whole thing. Instead of doing like I wanted to do and creating stories, I was begging for money. Now it's not too different from what you're doing at a startup now, but anyway, it was something that very quickly became, this is in a very quick amount of time, I realized how much I needed to go in a different direction.
But there are consequences when you're begging for money, for the most part, in a small business. There aren't consequences when you get elected. Just that caveat.
It's so true. It's so true. And not to name names, but I was, working on, campaigns where these were power brokers of San Francisco, that, legacy generations. And, you could be great granddaughter, great grandson, and be like, I want to run and be the senator here. And that was a viable path. And it was like, oh, so much nepotism. And it just felt bad. And so I said, okay, need to go back to the drawing board. What the hell do I want to do? And that is when, being in the Bay Area, what else are you going to do? It's like, okay, this is Wild West of startup. And this was the, birth of the, kind of mobile, hyper growth period. And there was just opportunities everywhere. And so I said, this is something I can do. I can do what I like to do. I like to work with small groups of people that really care about something, just muscle something out, find a group of early believers, and then scale something out, just will it into reality. That was what I loved to do. And so after graduating Berkeley, I kind of went in and out of, started a couple startups of my own, went into a couple that I had joined early. In between, ran stints at, some of the big names at Google and others. And so I just got to see all aspects of, tech, and both from the creating, your own concept from 0 to 1, to working on something that is, scaling and, taking over the world in, some good and bad ways. And so it was a great experience that, allowed me to get there. Problem was, what initially had me started and wanting to do journalism was I wanted to really care about what I did. And a lot of the things I was building, which I loved, It didn't have that element of, oh, I love this, I believe in this, I'm passionate about it. And so it still wasn't quite right at that point.
So had you discovered Bitcoin along this journey of working in startups and starting them yourself?
Yeah, I think I was Bitcoin showed up multiple times, as it does to people, that it takes a bit to get there. But I after at Berkeley, I had a couple interactions with people there. Up in Sonoma, there was a group. So I ran was on the board for an organization that brought services to migrant workers coming through the valley. So we'd say, let's get you legal help. We'd get someone to be legal, medical, and we'd bring people in to help them bring new, tools, services, help for them, because it was totally marginalized, group that would just be essentially powering this place, but was given zero, skin in the game for it. And so one of this group was a group from Berkeley who came up, and this guy spoke about Bitcoin as a tool of remittance back then. And so at that point, I was just like, it's a tool. I saw it as purely a tool, a means of doing something that wasn't much more than that, just like a hammer. It wasn't a movement in my head at all or anything. So I had that. I was fairly involved in Occupy Wall Street in Oakland.
You
And
were?
yes, I
No
mean,
way.
I was at Berkeley, so there are a lot of things going on at Berkeley, that brought me into and crossed paths with a lot of different movements and things like this back then. And one of them was Occupy Wall Street, and so that was one of the first times that I experienced that as a tool. Because if you recall, a lot of the payment applications, PayPal's, Venmos were just shutting down these accounts everywhere. And we were using Bitcoin wallets to pay off vendors, to receive donations. And it was really amazing. And so, again, for me, seeing it as a tool, not someone pitching a tool that someone else needed, like they were doing to the migrant workers, but to me, I was like, oh, this is great. But it was still very much a tool, semi-associated. I still didn't quite get the connection between Occupy Wall Street's tenets and Bitcoin. It was more, here's a tool to help you do what you're going to do there. And my last year at Berkeley, I was down in Argentina, and it was with a family, a guy. I think it was 3 months after Bitcoin went live and had the first couple blocks were mined. I was like down there in March or April, something like that. And it was also during one of Argentina's, or right up before one of their debt restructuring. So just hyperinflation. I was
Wow.
going down there being like, wow, my dollar is going really far. But
Wow.
I ended up living with a family there who had a big family dinner one time, and I was sat next to this guy who's a developer there, and he was like, "You heard of this thing called Bitcoin?" And he put a lot of his wealth into it, and he very much someone who I've kept up with for a while. Was able to preserve his wealth away from multiple debt restructurings in Argentina in a way that was, absolutely blew my mind. And so, so many of these times were just like Bitcoin as a means of storing wealth, Bitcoin as a means of remittance, of an unstoppable payment, all of the great headlines. And I was still like, this is, it's a kind of cool thing on the side. I didn't realize this is the thing I need to be working on. This is actually what I need to be working on. And that didn't happen until much later, meeting a friend at a company I was also working at, who was building Bitcoin companies and Bitcoin startups. And I realized, wait, this is a thing much bigger than these isolated tools that I had. And so it was, I think the time between my first interaction, 2012 or so, actually using it, and then actually starting was, 6 years, 4 to 5 years, something like that. So, as they say, Bitcoin needs to hit you in the head like 3 or 4 times before you actually do something about it.
Very true. Guilty. I first heard about it from people in San Francisco while I was living in Sacramento, and I dismissed it. And I wish I could go back in time because I had more money. It was cheaper, and I had like more savings at the time that I could have put in. But anyway, we all get it at the price we deserve. Okay,
Yes.
so let's share the story of Fold then. I would love to hear how you came up with the idea, why you felt that there was a need in the space for this, and just what was it like building a company? Because I think that this space is growing so quickly. There is so much energy and momentum, even in a bear market. People are building. These apps are going to help onboard people and get us to that hyper Bitcoinization. And an app like yours is really helpful because a lot of people, I think, want to dabble a little bit. They want to put a toe in, and they want to do it in a way where they don't have to learn about a cold storage wallet yet. Maybe they will down the road, but they just, maybe they just want to earn some sats by buying their Amazon gift card or heading to the grocery store. So tell me about, the origins of Fold.
Fold has had a couple iterations, and the first time that I, uh, learned that I could build, not only have this thing that I do and love is build things, but I could do it for something that I'm really passionate about. I was the first time I saw these two things come together was working, I think it was consulting for Google, and the head of tech on my project was ended up being my co-founder, and he had started a very side thing of, hey, you can sell me a gift card and I'll give you Bitcoin. It was essentially like a exchange, like a non KYC exchange. And I was like, oh my God, this is awesome. You're helping people get Bitcoin because they don't get all these gift cards that they don't want, and they could sell it to you and you're going to give them Bitcoin. It's great. And so I started to think, could I work on this? We had started to build a relationship. We'd kind of go back and forth on where this idea could go. And to me, it was just clear that this idea of what Bitcoin is was way too big to be something that was only serving the small group of people who just already wanted more Bitcoin and allow them a new way of getting Bitcoin. I was like, this thing is huge. Why don't more people know about this? Why doesn't my mom have Bitcoin right now? All these people in Sonoma who maybe shared a lot of these things of being predisposed to low time preference, long-term investment. Why, proof of work, all this stuff, why these are concepts that should be more widely known. And really, I looked around the space and all the on-ramps were mostly about trading, just how to flip to get rich and play the gamble game. And then there was some about investing, more like, hey, allocate 1% of your portfolio to Bitcoin. But really, the audiences around that are already people who already invest. It's not new people coming to space. It's traders were already there, and they're already being well served by name XYZ shitcoin casino. And I looked at it and say, how do we access and tap into a much larger market? How do we do that? Because at the end of the day, Fold is very much like an exchange. You earn rewards and we convert that into Bitcoin for you. But the difference is, instead of focusing on traders and investors, we focus on just consumers, people who buy things and people who want to buy things. And looked at the problem and said, well, I think we should let's tap into this. Let's get more Bitcoiners in, and then we'll work on all the other things that we wanted. And so looking at the opportunity, I saw that rewards, 90+% of American families participate in rewards programs. The most of the people who are active in rewards programs are women and young people, both demographics that are not never had seen a Bitcoin product really tailored to them that provided value. And so rewards very quickly became a very easy way to think about onboarding the masses. And with rewards also, you don't need a wallet, you don't need to buy it, you don't need to set up, go through KYC. It provided this perfect on-ramp into Bitcoin, like you said, of just starting to get a hold of start to learn about it, have it be a conversation piece when you're with your friends at dinner and say, I have a little bit of Bitcoin. And then it kind of creates this snowball effect. And so that's where the idea of Fold came. It was like, hey, we had this gift card thing and exchange thing, but we don't have the right end consumer for this idea is much bigger than it is. It's way, way bigger for it. And so we needed to match it to something that was able to capture millions of people, that instead of just the people who are already knew about it. And so that's kind of the origin of where Fold's idea fell into place.
Well, you're so right. I mean, everyone wants to earn rewards for just the everyday purchases that they make. And the ones that I think became the most popular had to do with travel. I certainly, before I got the Fold card, wanted, my airline miles or my hotel points. And you realize those suffer from inflation as well, because they're just the company's shit coins.
Yep.
Whereas this, you're earning actual Bitcoin. And I have my Fold card. I'm going to show it because I carry it with me everywhere. And by the way, guys, Will didn't ask for this interview. I'm I'm just obsessed with this company. And so I wanted to bring them on because I'm really proud to partner with you guys. And I use this all the time. And it's an easy way to tell people about it because you spin a wheel and you feel like you're on Wheel of Fortune, which was always the dream show that I wanted to get on, but I didn't. But I did want to ask you, you have partnerships with like the traditional, the fiat payment rails. I know that we all want to envision a world where we have this circular Bitcoin economy and everyone's just transacting in sats. But the reality is that we still have these on-ramps and off-ramps, and we have these legacy companies like Visa that, you have to work with. So can you talk a little bit about that and where the two intersect? And, could Bitcoin obfuscate companies like that? It's time for a quick break to hear these messages from my partners. First up, CrowdHealth, a Bitcoin alternative to health insurance. Health insurance costs can be sky high today, and you essentially send money every month to a massive corporation, the health insurance black hole, as I call it. And if you don't need any healthcare, you never see that money again, right? But if you do need to go to a doctor, you end up having to pay even more out of pocket, especially if you end up as one of the 20% of claims on average that aren't covered. With CrowdHealth, you pay a small monthly fee that goes into an account that you actually accrue over time and is yours to use or keep if you ever leave. You can even save that money in Bitcoin. CrowdHealth is all about community, and the community crowdfunds everyone's healthcare. So if something does happen or you have a doctor visit, CrowdHealth will negotiate down the medical bill much lower than what insurance would be. And then the community helps you cover it. And in return, you help others cover their needs. For more information, you can head to joincrowdhealth.com/Natalie. And if you use promo code Natalie, you get 6 months for $99. All right, next up, iTrustCapital. iTrustCapital lets you invest in Bitcoin for your retirement with the tax benefits of an IRA. You can defer taxes on gains using a crypto IRA, or with a Roth IRA, you can withdraw tax-free at retirement. And here are some important things to know given the recent crypto contagion. iTrust does not lend against client assets. iTrust accounts are also FDIC insured up to $250,000 US, and iTrust does not hold customer assets or money. Assets are actually held between Coinbase custody and a custody platform called Fireblocks. And Fireblocks, by the way, underlies pretty much the entire industry. So if you're doing retirement planning and considering adding Bitcoin to your IRA portfolio, you can sign up for an account and get a $100 bonus at itrust.capital/Natalie Brunell.
Yeah, that's a good and big question. Part of our strategy was to meet people where they are already, right? We're already buying stuff. We're already going to Amazon. We're already going to Starbucks. Let's make it so that you're earning Bitcoin every time you do that. And it's easy to say Bitcoin is, it's harder to make the case against someone brand new that Bitcoin is a better version of the dollar. That creates a little bit more education. It's really easy to say that Bitcoin is a better version of a hotel point, reward point, airline mile that they themselves know get devalued and have no value in many cases. And so it's a perfect thing. Instead, hey, let's change the discussion right now. Instead of Bitcoin versus the dollar and the Fed, all that stuff, hey, Bitcoin versus your reward point. It wins every single time. And so the job was just to meet people where they are. Let's make it very easy for them. Let's have very familiar looking tools that they can use to start this journey. And so that was a debit card, runs on Visa rails. It was our merchant offer networks, which is gift cards and card linked offers soon to be. And these things that people already do that requires very little change in any behaviors at all. But to your point, that requires us to go to legacy fiat traditional companies, which Bitcoin is definitely a challenger against them, and say, hey, Bitcoin is going to be good for you. And here's why. And that conversation has always been very hard for a Bitcoin company to make. Number one, because when Bitcoin was early, the only real use case that was successful was just trading, was just high frequency. Let's try to flip it, buy coins and trade back and forth. It wasn't really relevant to mass market. And so when Fold came out, the vision was, hey, let's create a rewards company that can change people's loyalty. They're gonna, if Uber comes to us, you're gonna have Lyft wanting to come to us too, because people want to earn Bitcoin by going with Uber and using this thing. We had to prove that out probably over 2 years before merchants started to really understand the power of this. That number one, Bitcoin, the people that hold Bitcoin and care about it is not a couple thousand people. It's tens of millions of people, and they are more motivated than your average consumer. And so they will change their allegiance, their loyalty, and Fold got all this data around this so that we could show that someone who came in saying, I am always, allegiant, have allegiance to this company, changed it immediately when the competitor comes on board with Fold. And it was a really powerful value proposition for these merchants because, before, Bitcoin adoption in terms of merchants was always like, accept Bitcoin as a payment. And they would do that, and no one would use Bitcoin as a payment for many reasons. Number one, because not many people had Bitcoin. Number two, not many people wanted to spend it. And so these merchants would say, well, Bitcoin didn't help my business. In fact, it created a bad PR moment for us and more complicated, payment processing for me. But when you talk about it from a rewards perspective and say, hey, I will bring hundreds of thousands of new customers to you who will totally become your most loyal customers, that is when they start to think about this a little bit more. And so we were able to create these partnerships. From there, Visa saw how fast our rewards program was growing. We approached them with the idea of creating the Bitcoin rewards card. They said, great, we were the first Bitcoin company accepted in their fast track program. We brought it to market. The Fold debit card became one of the fastest growing debit card programs ever to launch on Visa. And what it
Wow.
did was one of these things is numbers don't lie. Like, we can talk a lot about, why or why not you should or not adopt Bitcoin, but the world really works according to show me the numbers, show me the money. And our conversations got easier and easier. Number one, because we are a good company that takes care of our users and our partners. We don't do a lot of the things that unfortunately loses a lot of credibility for our industry that we've seen over the past couple of months. But also, we bring good business to those that work with us. And so that has just opened doors time and time again. And that's the blueprint we kind of run on, is let's align incentives and just grow.
Right. I want to talk a little bit about how you've been growing in a bear market as well. You've made some really exciting announcements, and you're right. We've seen some of the other companies wash away in the space. There was another credit card that offered rewards, and now that company's gone. And we don't have to name it, but it's gone. And so clearly you guys have been doing something right. Can you talk a little bit about building in this bear market and the challenges, but also the opportunities maybe it presents for the industry?
Fold has now gone through a couple market cycles with Bitcoin, bears and bulls, and so we've been able to learn a little bit how this works. And the bear markets are for creating all the value that will be used and demonstrated in bull markets. If you're trying to do that during a bull market, you're way too late, because the growth is way too fast. Bitcoin's growth cycles during bull markets bring in millions of people, on a daily basis to this new thing, and exposes brand new people. And so you really need to make sure that you can not only survive through a bear market, but continue to build. And build. The unfortunate part about that is a lot of bear markets are also the times when Bitcoin's credibility or reputation is also not as bright. It's not the hot thing anymore. And so it's harder to get these. Sometimes it's harder to build, and it's much harder to build when you have to rely on partnerships. And so building a business that has a good reputation in bull and bear markets, and that says that we take care of our customers are aligned with us, our incentives, helps us go in bear markets say, okay, there's this side of the industry that for whatever reason made these business choices that were bad for their users and bad for their partners. And then there's this side, and this is companies like Fold, that we do it right. We show a pathway, number one, how to survive, but also how to thrive, and our partners thrive too. Watch, go ask a Visa or our banking partners or anyone else, and they will echo this sentiment. And this allows us to continue that momentum through bear markets. And so one of the things that we were able to just announce was that Fold will be operating globally for our rewards program, and not only that, get help directly from our banking and card processing partners to move very fast, which is something that's nothing ever happens fast in the traditional banking industry. So that was a huge thing to be able to just get during a bear market. At the same time, I think 3 weeks before, there was a Forbes article about how Visa is ending all relationships with crypto businesses.
Right.
And, I'm sitting on this press release being like, well, not this one. And that's a lot of working in the stage of not just being the example that you would want to partner with, and just continuous to focus on that, because the more you demonstrate that, the more that in bad times, people are going to stick with you and be loyal. So I think it really was just a demonstration of years of work really to get things like that to happen.
Wow, for sure. Well, having been through several cycles, is there any lesson that makes maybe this bear market different that we can learn from, especially for the newcomers? I have a lot of people who watch the show or follow my content because they're trying to learn, and they're starting from ground zero. They're just dipping their toes in, and something like this might be really interesting to them because they're already spending the money, right, on different things in their lives, and now they can earn Bitcoin back. But what's maybe different about this bear market, and what's the lesson that can be taken away?
I think this is one of my favorite bear markets that we've had. And that's because most of Bitcoin's bear markets have been in times when the greater economy is either doing okay or doing very, very well. And so it's always hard to have, Bitcoin go into a bear market when everything is ripping and people are like, wow, look at what a scam, a failure, a debt, whatever they're going to throw at it. In this bear market, not only has Bitcoin been able to sustain a price floor that is just phenomenal to me, with the implosions across the economy, but the economy itself is showing why we need Bitcoin. From everything from the recent bank failures that we had and issues with fractional reserve banking, to the idea of living with inflation or just printing more money, two options that we do not want to have, but those are the options that we get. Just waiting for Powell to come out and say which way the wind blows this day, and none of those things are present in Bitcoin. And in fact, Bitcoin has looked like a damn stable coin during this whole
Yeah.
this time, and it has become a bastion of stability, which it is. And that's a hard thing for people to get in a time when the economy is doing all right and Bitcoin's doing its price discovery, but in a time when the whole rest of the economy is shaking and Bitcoin is remaining steady. Emission is, blocks are being mined block by block. The monetary policy isn't changing; it's continuing to add value. That conversation is much easier to have with new people than it was previously. And so I really like this bear market because of that. It's demonstrating the value of that Bitcoin can bring into people's lives. And for where I come from, I graduated college in around 08. There's been nothing stable about our fiat economy, and it's like, wait, let's really understand that. And once you think about that and really absorb that, you feel how stable Bitcoin is and what a stable foundation it can provide for families, for individuals, for businesses. And it's a hard thing to learn, but I think this bear market allows us to get as close as we've ever been.
One thing that you said about Powell and deciding where the wind's going to blow in terms of the monetary policy, it literally just made me think of, could you imagine if in nature there was one person that decided the weather for like the winemaking industry, for example, and these vines got water, these vines got sunshine, like what? It would never work, right? You get to pick winners and losers. And yet we essentially have that in our system, manipulating the base layer of our entire economy and how we function day to day. I mean, it's just crazy. But you and I were clearly in college around the same time. And one thing that I've, really noticed and become passionate about is this idea that our generation, millennials, young people, they really don't have a seat at the table financially, and wealth accumulation and generation is very difficult because so few people have the power and access to capital. And so how do you catch up? How do you get the house? And a lot of people have put off having families, but you clearly have not. You're a new dad. You have a beautiful family, beautiful wife. I hope I get to see her. I don't know if you guys are going to be at the Bitcoin conference, but can you share a little bit about why that was maybe something that was important for you? Because really, I mean, today, and turn on the news, right? It shows the worst of society. I'm so grateful not to be in that industry anymore, but it's like no one's having kids anymore. Everyone thinks that the world is going to, blow up in a climate emergency. It's like all so negative. And yet there are Bitcoiners who are thriving and creating abundance and building families and teaching their kids about Bitcoin. So why was that something that was important to you?
I think whether we're talking about Bitcoin or families or, you know, just investing in things that are long term is really a symptom of that. Exactly right. We are living in a time where the end times seem nigh and are constantly said, repeated to you on from all sides, from everybody. It's very much a pessimist world right now, and to feel optimistic about something, to find pathways and friends and practices and behaviors that foster optimism is, I think, one of the most powerful things you can do in this world right now. Bitcoin is one of those things that is a fundamentally an optimist technology, an optimist culture. Building a family, I believe, is a inherently optimistic statement. It's saying, I believe in this next generation. I believe it will be good. I believe things may not be good now, but it will be, whether it's something that we do or that our children do. It is a believing in a future. And I think, I think I certainly have been in places in my life where I have been over, part of a nihilist, perspective. And I think this world is breeding a ton of nihilism. And so anything that we can do surrounding yourself with the things that breed optimism, and it's a kind of a cyclical thing, is a thing that's going to make your own life way better. And it's something that will just have an ambient effect on those around you. And so again, there's a couple optimist technologies that we know: Bitcoin, childbearing, family creating, building a home wherever that is, in whatever way you can imagine, spending time with your family, building community. All those things just are able to double down on each other and amplify one another in a way that, ultimately you can kind of create a world that feels super optimistic, even though if you look beyond a little bit, the rest of the world may not be living in it. But I think it's the best, most revolutionary thing you can do is to be an optimist these days.
I love it. Yeah, Bitcoin is an anti-nihilism tool. Maybe
There we
that'll be
go.
the title of this. All right. Well, it's been such a pleasure to talk to you. Any just final thoughts or messages to share, whether it's about yourself, your thoughts on Bitcoin, or your company?
Oh man. Well, I think I love the Bitcoin community, how tight knit it is, how the fact of, when you build something, you have an inherent group of people who are there waiting to try it, to give you feedback. And so anything that you want to see about Fold improved, like, my DMs are always open. But I encourage you to not only do the ones that are the Folds of the world, or your other sponsors, our good friend Swan, but contribute to open source projects, download open source applications, get on Nostr. These things are the bedrock that will allow us to go for the next 10 to 15 years. Whereas these on-ramps now that we have and that are building, Fold being one, is incredible. And it will bring new generations of Bitcoiners to the space that otherwise would not have entered. But at the end of the day, we can't forget the projects that also normally don't get the funding they need, don't get the users they need. So give them feedback, use their tools, and I think ultimately we'll be set up for a good future with a lot of cool new things to use. And then the other bit is support our wonderful Bitcoin educators and creators. You've been an amazing inspiration for us at Fold. I know everyone listens to your show on the team, so we are very grateful for you as well.
Well, I'm very grateful. I'm honored to be partnered with Fold. So I hope everyone does, get the app and the Visa debit card. You could go to foldapp.com/Natalie. They'll give you some free sats because they're so generous. And it's just, I'm actually going to put my dinner tonight with Natalie Smolensky, one of my favorite Bitcoiners, another Natalie in the space. I'm going to put it on my Fold card tonight. But Will, thank you so much. And I hope to get to see you and your family soon.
We will.
Thank you so much for checking out this episode of Coin Stories. Again, hit like on the video and make sure that you have those notifications on so you don't miss out on any new episodes. And I would love to hear from you. If you have suggestions, feedback, guest requests, please email me at natalie@talkingbitcoin.com. Thanks so much.